This week's Parsha Shlach, tells the story with the Meraglim, the 12 scouts, that Moshe Rabbeinu sends to Eretz Yisrael in order to survey the land and give a report to the Jewish people of what would be the easiest and most effective way of entering, conquering, and settling the Holy Land. Of course, we know the story that the results of this mission were disastrous. The 10 Meraglim, the 12 spies, the 12 Meraglim came back, but 10 of them gave a very negative report about the land, explaining to the Jewish people that this situation is hopeless. It would be impossible naturally to conquer the land. It's a land filled with mighty people and strong fortresses, Eretz Eicheles Yeshveh, a land which consumes its inhabitants, and with great skill and passion and cleverness, they dissuade an entire nation of their destiny to enter into the Holy Land, to the point that the nation breaks out in profuse weeping and exclaims, "We do not want to go into the Holy Land. Why did you take us out of Egypt in order to kill us and our families in war in Eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan?" Of course, Hashem gives forth the famous decree that this generation indeed will not enter the land. Rather, they will remain in the desert, in the wilderness for 40 years, where they will die. And it's only the next generation after 40 years that will enter into the promised land. It's important to emphasize in the story that for these 40 years, the Jews did not suffer. They had Moshe Rabbeinu, they had Aaron, they had manna from heaven, they had the clouds of glory surrounding them, they had a life which was paradise-like. It was a utopia. So you're dealing with a generation that remained in the desert as a punishment, but a punishment that wasn't a regular punishment, one which actually gave them an unbelievable life with Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron and the Mishkan and the cloud and the pillar of fire and all of the miracles that accompanied the Jewish people for the next 4 decades in the wilderness. Yet the great question we want to address this evening is, what happened to the spies? How is it that the 12 scouts that Moshe Rabbeinu sent to Eretz Yisrael, people which were exceptional and remarkable, as the Chazal tell us, they were great people of prominence, great men of spiritual caliber, great tzaddikim. They were leaders of the Jewish people. These were the Nesiim, the leaders of the tribes. These were not simple rabble-rousers, gossipers, troublemakers, whom we can understand as bums would go and stir up such a kasha. You're dealing here with great men. What happened to them? How is it that 10 of them became so corrupt to entice and motivate the entire nation to rebel and betray the Ratzon Hashem, the desire of Hashem Yisborech, that they enter into Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land that God promised to Abraham and Isaac and Jacob? How can such great spiritual giants become revolutionary figures who will create a mutiny against Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, and Eretz Yisrael? Many explanations have been given to this enigma. Most of the commentators of Chumash address this question, each of them presenting their own answer. From the Ramban to the Rachayim and all of the other Mefarshim. No question, one of the most original and engaging explanations is the one presented by the Alter Rebbe, the giant of giants, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi in Likutei Torah, in his magnum opus, Likutei Torah, Parshas Shlach. Where the Alter Rebbe says that the Meraglim crave to live an isolated, spiritual, transcendental, and godly life. They were fearful that entering into a civilized land where the Jewish people will have to occupy themselves with agriculture, with business, with politics, with the infrastructure of a government and of a society, they will forfeit their intimate relationship with God and with spirituality. The coarseness of materialism will deprive them from their celestial refinement and from their evolved spiritual sensibility and sensitivity. The historical error of the Miraglim, says the Alter Rebbe, was that they ignored the mission statement of creation, that the ultimate goal and vision was that the Jewish people shall confront a dark, earthy, opaque world and transform it into a divine abode. But tonight, I want to focus on another explanation, one presented by a man named Reb Shmuel Vital. Reb Shmuel Vital, by way of introduction, was the son of Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital, who was born in 1542 and passed away in the year 1620 in Syria and Damascus, is considered the most important and greatest student of the Arizal. Rabbi Yitzchok Luria, the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, one of the greatest Kabbalists of all time, who passed away in the year Shin Lamed Beis, 1572 in Tzfas, in the holy city of Tzfas, where he is interred. And for the last 2 years of his life, when he lived in Tzfas, Reb Chaim Vital became the Talmud Muvak of the Arizal and transcribed most of the teachings, the revolutionary teachings of his Rebbe of the Arizal. Reb Shmuel Vital, who lived like his father in Damascus in Syria, edited the writings of his father Reb Chaim and organized the writings of the Arizal the way we have them today. They are known as Kisvei HaArizal, the writings of the Arizal. These were prepared, edited by Reb Shmuel Vital, Reb Chaim's son. And in some places, Reb Shmuel adds his own personal notations and commentaries. One of these places is Shar HaPsukim from the Arizal, which is the commentary of the Arizal on Chumash. It goes on the Parshas Shlach. And there, Reb Shmuel Vital adds a footnote giving his own perspective of what happened to the Miraglim. How do we explain the fact that great spiritual Jews create such a conspiracy, a blatant rebellion against the Rebbeinu Shalom, against Moshe Rabbeinu, who promised them he would take them into Eretz Yisrael? The same God who took them out of Egypt, who gave them Torah, who split the sea, who accompanied them day in and day out with miracles. How is it possible that these very individuals, great individuals, will come out with such a mutiny and motivate the whole nation towards this conflict with Moshe and Hashem? What went wrong? How did it happen? Zok Reb Shmuel Vital. Parshas Shlach follows Parshas Ba'aloischa. At the end of Parshas Ba'aloischa, we discover two characters, Eldad and Medad, who are prophesizing. Two people remain behind the other 68, and they begin prophesying. Yeshua tells Moshe Rabbeinu, my master Adoni Moshe Kloyim, incarcerate them. And Moshe responds to Yeshua, communicating those immortal words. Hamekane atali umiyitein v'haya kolam Hashem neviim kitin Hashem esruchi aleya. Are you jealous for me? My wish is that the whole nation of God turn into prophets, that Hashem confers His Spirit upon them. I don't need it to stay in the family. I don't need it to stay in my little party, in my own organization. Don't be jealous of me. My vision is meyitin v'haya kolam Hashem neviim. I want every Jew to be a prophet. What perturbed Yeshua bin Nun so deeply? Why did he care that Eldad and Medad were prophesied? Sagt Rashi, their prophecy was unique, it was singular. The prophecy of Eldad and Medad was Moshe Meis v'Yeshua Machnes Yisrael Aretz. Moshe will die, and it will be Joshua who will bring the Jewish people into the land. This was, of course, a prophecy said before the Meraglim went. It's 40 years before Moshe Rabbeinu would die, would strike a rock instead of talking to a rock in Parshas Chukas. But they prophesied that Moshe is going to pass on and Yehoshua will take the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael. According to this, Reb Shmuel Vital explains why when the spies came back with their gossip about the Holy Land, Kalev ben Yefuna was the only one from the two remaining spies that were who were loyal to Moshe, who stood up and silenced the nation. Vayas Kalev es ha'am, we learn in Shlach. Kalev silenced the nation, trying to influence the Jewish people to do tshuva. What happened with Yehoshua ben Nun? Why did he not open his mouth to protest the message of the spies? Zakh Reb Shmuel Vital, concerning Yehoshua, the Jewish people would say he's biased. He wants the Jewish people to go into the land. You know why? We just heard a prophecy of Eldon and Medad that who's going to take them in? Yehoshua. If we stay in the desert, Yehoshua is not the leader. Moshe is the leader. If we go into the land, Moshe dies. Yehoshua takes them in. He wants to be the Maneg Adar. Since he's biased, he could be seen as biased. He didn't have the power to persuade the nation. Only Kalev ben Yefuna, who was objective in his whole story, he hoped that he would be able to change the position of the nation, which of course he did not. Comes Reb Shmuel Vital and says, since the spies knew about the prophecy of Eldad and Medad, that Moshe will not lead the Jewish people into Eretz Yisrael, 40 years because the prophecy was not said silently. It was said loud. Many people heard it. Yehoshua ben Nun heard it, and many people heard it. So it went around, so the Jews knew about it, and certainly the Meraglim knew about it. And by the way, the Gemara says in Megillah, Mila b'sela, mashtuka b'trein. One word costs a selah. To speak costs a selah. Silence is worth two slayim. Silence is more valuable than speaking, as we know. So the Oyev Yisrael, Rabbi Avram Yeshua Eshel of Apta once said, Mila b'sela, sela is a coin, it's a currency, it's also a rock, a stone. Mila b'sela, if Moshe would have spoken to the rock, if he would have said a word to the rock, instead of striking the rock, Mashtuka betrain, two people would have been silent, Eldad and Medad. Because Moshe would have gone and entered Eretz Yisrael. So Eldad and Medad, Mashtuka betrain, two would have remained silent, Eldad and Medad. Since the Meraglim knew that Eldad and Medad prophesied this, and they knew that Eldad and Medad were authentic prophets, so the Meraglim sacrificed their own lives in order to make sure that Moshe Rabbeinu remains alive. The Meraglim were determined to create a situation where the Jewish people will refuse to go into Eretz Yisrael. They will remain in the desert, so that Moshe Rabbeinu will remain alive with the Jewish people. They knew the day they go into Eretz Yisrael, Moshe will have to pass on, and the reins will go to Yehoshua. So they sacrificed themselves that Moshe should remain amidst them. They decided they will persuade the entire nation not to enter into the promised land. So Moshe will remain, in the words of Reb Shmuel Vital, Chai v'Kayim. And they, the Jewish people, will never be separated from Moshe Rabbeinu. The spies, in other words, understood Moshe will die only when they go into Eretz Yisrael. But if the Jews will remain forever in the Midbar, in the desert, Moshe won't leave the world. He will continue to live and function and remain the Rebbe, the leader and the teacher and the mentor of the Jewish people. The scouts were not stupid. They were not foolish. They were of a great level, and they knew that as a punishment for their rebellion, they will die. And yet, they sacrificed themselves. They sacrificed their lives. They were ready to make a mutiny against the plan of the Rebbeinu Shalom and die in a plague, so that Moshe Rabbeinu should remain the Manig Yisrael, the leader of the Jewish people. They were ready to die so that Moshe would live. Not only that, Reb Shmuel says, they believed Yehoshua one of the spies might die with them. And then certainly Moshe Rabbeinu will remain the Rebbe of the people. Moshe understood a lot of this. Moshe could sense the great love that the Meraglim had towards him. But Moshe also knew Ein Eitzav Ein Tvuna Neged Hashem. The Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world. Hamagid Mereishis Acharis Atayedeya Razayolam Hashem orchestrates the system of history. V'zorach Hashemesh Haba Hashemesh, the sun rises and the sun sets. Doir Hoilich v'doir Ba, generation comes, a generation goes. Al Toimer says Shloima HaMelech Al Ma Yamim HaRishayim HaYutoivim Me'ela Kiloi Mechachma Sha'al Talz. Don't ask why were the first days, the days of yore, so much better than these days, the good old days. It's not a question coming from Chachma. The Rebbeinu Shalom establishes the patterns of history through his divine providence, and Moshe understood. And he named Yeshua, so Hashem should help him from falling prey to the perspective of the Meraglim, because Hashem wants the Jews to go into Eretz Yisrael. Suddenly here, we have a different portrait of the Meraglim. We're dealing with a group of Jews, a group of leaders who are totally dedicated, according to Reb Shmuel Vital, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Nothing in life is relevant. The most important and singular priority is that Moshe Rabbeinu should remain Chai V'Kayim. They were sick with love, Chaylas Ava, towards Moshe Rabbeinu. They were great. They were ready to go enormous distances, even to destroy the plan of entering Eretz Yisrael, just that Moshe should not leave the world. And what happened, says Reb Shmuel Vital? They accomplished their mission. Moshe remained together with the Jews for 40 years. 40 years Moshe enriched, inspired, and led the Jewish people through the wilderness. Did the Meraglim make a mistake? Of course they made a mistake. Did they commit a sin? They committed a sin. But Reb Shmuel Vital teaches us what we could learn from the Meraglim. What it means to be connected to a Rebbe, what it means to be connected to a Moshe Rabbeinu. The heart burns, the heart glows when you read this explanation of Reb Shmuel Vital in the story of the Meraglim. And maybe we could compare it to another story, although not with the same drama, not with the same consequences, which will happen 1,500 years later when another Rebbe, Rabbeinu Yehuda Hanassi, is very ill, and he's on his deathbed, and the Gemara says in Ksuvis, Daf Kuf Daled Amud Aleph, how hu yoyim edenoch nafshe, the Rebbe, that day when the soul of Rebbe passed on. Gozru Rabbanon Taniso Borachimi, the rabbis decreed a fast and they begged for mercy. Va'amri, and they said, Kol man the Yomar noch nafshe, the Rebbe Yidoke Becherev. They declared, whoever will say Rebbe died will be pierced with a spear. How can Jews speak like this? Rebbe was an old man. Rebbe was sick. It was the time to pass away. As when he passed away, the famous declaration, Nitzchu Areilim es Hametzukim. Accept God's decree with love, say Kaddish, learn Mishnayos, make a new Rebbe, and peace on Israel. Adam Arishan died, Avram Avinu died, Moshe Rabbeinu died, David HaMelech died, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai died. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is not different. Why can't he die? And who expresses himself this way? That if somebody is going to tell the truth and say, Nach Nafshe, the Rebbe died, Yidoker Becherev, he should be pierced with a sword, with a spear. So the Maharsha, the great Talmudic commentator in Masechta Ksuvos, writes that the students of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi believe that based on his deeds and his Torah, they felt Rebbe is somebody who essentially must live forever. He was worthy to live forever and to exist for eternity. Death is ultimately an aberration of reality that occurred because of the Yetz Hadas. So humanity one day is destined to cleanse itself from the agony and the pain of death. Umacha Hashem Dima Meyal Kalponim. We say Bila Amavis Lanetzach Yishayanav. The end of Ma'at Kot. They felt, however, that Rebbe even these days embodies that quality that is one with life and is beyond death. They were connected with all the chords of their soul to Rabbeinu Yehuda Hanassi. Certainly they knew what happened to Adam Rishon and David HaMelech and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. But in their mind, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi couldn't die. Kol man the Yomar noch nafshe the Rebbe yidokir b'cherev. To declare that Rebbe died is essentially a death sentence on yourself. It's a reflection of you, not of Rebbe. That's what they mean, Yidokir b'cherev. Not they would stand with swords and stab a person, Chalila v'chas. But essentially to say that he's dead is sentencing yourself to death. It's because you're detached from life. Your death allows you to believe that he's dead. Rebbe is beyond death. Of course, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi passed away. And the way it was communicated, the Gemara says there in Ksuvas about the struggle between the Malachim and the people down here. And there was a struggle, there was a conflict. Who will win? Heaven or earth? And heaven triumphed, and the soul of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was returned to the bosom of its Father in heaven. And in many ways, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, besides the Gemara says there he would come to his family, make Kiddush, famous Rabbi Akiva Eiger over there, the Gilyon Hashas from Sefer Chassidim, the meaning of that. But of course, in many ways, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi is Chai V'Kaya. The whole institution of Torah Shabbal Peh, which is based on the Mishnayos, was edited by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi every day. Thousands of Jews pick up a Mishnayos and learn a Perek Mishnayos. And Rebbe lives in the minds and in the hearts, in the yeshivas, in the Batei Midrashim, in the koilelim, and in the houses of Klal Yisrael for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, for close to 2,000 years. This is a reflection of what Reb Shmuel Vital says about the Meraglim. The Meraglim were no simple, lowly individuals who craved to make a mutiny against Moshe and against Hashem. On the contrary, the Meraglim sacrificed their lives so that Moshe Rabbeinu should live. The Meraglim were ready to put everything on the line, including their own commitment, including the knowledge that forever they will be defined as the great sinners of Israel, as the great rebels against Hashem, but that Moshe Rabbeinu should be. The Gemara says, according to one opinion, the generation of the Meraglim don't have a part in Olam Haba. So the great Kabbalist Rebbe Nachem Azariah Fanu in Asorim Amoris writes, Ein lem chelik l'olam haba, because they're higher than that. A portion in Olam Haba is too little for them. They're beyond the chelik l'olam haba. And one of the explanations one could say, based on Reb Shmuel Vital, is the Meraglim is not looking for a chelik in Olam Haba. They're looking to be one with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the Eved Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu, who has no ego, Moshe Rabbeinu, who doesn't exist on his own. He's a channel for godliness. Anoichi yoimid bein Hashem u'beineichem lahagid lechem es dvar Hashem. Shechina medaberes mitoch groinai. Moshe doesn't have his own identity. The whole identity of Moshe Rabbeinu is a channel through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is expressed. The Meraglim don't need Olam Haba. They're not looking for their own reward, for their own perfection, for their own schar, which is what Olam Haba is. They want to be connected to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ein lem chelik l'Olam Haba. They're beyond Olam Haba. They were totally choilas ava connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, the Eved Hashem. Have a wonderful evening.